Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And today we have a presentation organized and led by UCLink student assistant Eros Nahara, who is going to be presenting about the representation of UCLink's programs and participants, and specifically focusing on their ethnic backgrounds throughout time. Within the UCLink's history. So, Eros.
Thank you. Yeah. So my name is Eros Nahara. I've been the student assistant for UC Links for a year now. And just a quick introduction about the research I'm doing here. As you can see in the title, it's called Equity in Practice, Exploring Representation of Ethnic Backgrounds in University Community Links Programs in a Post-Affirmative Action Era. So this is going to be looking at sort of a historical overview of the UC Links program, where we're going to be taking primarily ethnic background data that the programs have given us, and kind of just looking at like what trends we see over time and what kind of representation you have. And we'll also be looking at the system-wide UC ethnic background as well for comparison and reference. So we'll go ahead. And first off, I know you all know what UC Links is, but if by chance someone doesn't know, we'll go ahead and kind of just give a brief overview of the program. It was initiated in 1996 as a response to the elimination of affirmative action. And we're looking at almost 30 years of data to learn from the innovative responses of the exemplary university community partnerships involved in this network. It was, like I said, it was established in 1996 as a statewide strategy to overcome institutional racism and support the academic and social development of minoritized P through 20 students after the University of California Regents and later the voters of California eliminated the consideration of race and ethnicity in admissions. Since then, University Links, university and community partners, both in California and beyond, have forged alternative equity strategies by working collaboratively to develop and sustain programs that connect young people from historically marginalized communities with university students from diverse backgrounds in innovative learning activities that prepare P through 12 students for higher learning while preparing university students for graduate and professional training and future careers. And we have a diagram here on the slide that kind of helps visualize this process, where we have the university faculty, undergraduate students and graduate students working in a partnership with the schools and community-based organizations around them to help support these mission goals that UC Links has. So now going into like the main meat of the research, first I want to talk about the methodology we have here. So this consists of primarily compiled archival information, looking at UC Links programs and participants, also looking at the budget and the UC system-wide data that we have posted publicly. So starting with the program participants, the main data source is the internal UC Links annual progress reports. From 1996 to 2004, these were done internally without any requirements or oversight by, organizations larger than UC Links. So there's a lot of data that we don't have from this time period, mainly ethnic background. That's because we didn't list them or analyze it during that time period. Starting from 2004, the Student Academic Preparation and Educational Partnerships was created, also known as SAPEP. And that sort of built kind of a structure and list of requirements needed in the APR, which included the ethnic background. So starting from 2004, we now have the ethnic background listed, and that's where the timeline starts for that. And these annual progress reports were then compiled into a sheet, which was then graphed along with these other information sources. In the UC Links budget, we collected that from the Department of Education, that lists the California state budget and where all that money went, along with data from SAPEP, as well as internal documentation to list sort of the relative funding that we have. And for the system-wide undergraduates, that information comes from the UCOP fall enrollment at a glance. We have the link on the slide there, and that lists the ethnic backgrounds of the students starting from 1999. So basically, I'll just give like just a brief overview of the methodology, right? So we have the APR, the budget for UC Links, as well as the system-wide UC undergraduate ethnic backgrounds. And we compiled all that into a sheet and then graphed that out, which now we'll show you the graphs. First, we have graph A, and there's a QR code in the top left too that you can look at, a one-pager, which will kind of like explain the key points that we'll take away from each of these graphs. The first one we have is UC Links participants and program sites over time. On the x-axis, you'll see that there is, for each year starting in 1996 all the way up to 2024, we have the blue bar is the P through 12 students that are participating in the program. The red bar is undergraduates, and the black bar is graduate students. And then the lines, the top green line is the relative funding. It's not directly accurate with the actual number. And then the program sites with also is a relative number. So these aren't the exact points. And basically, this kind of showcases sort of how the UC Links programs have developed over time, kind of like a big broad snapshot. As you can see, the funding kind of peaked around the mid 2000s, and in 2004 there was a budget cut, as well as some changing requirements from SAPEP, which changed sort of the trajectory of how the sites developed, and they stabilized, as well as the undergraduate students who participated. As you can see, after around 2010, the number of sites and undergraduate students participating in the program has stayed largely the same, while the P through 12 students fluctuate from time to time, and only started getting bigger after COVID. In 2021 or 2022, there was a one-time funding to have a joint partnership with CSU. And so you'll see that those last 2 years are including the programs that CSU are associated with. So the first ethnic background graph we have here is for the UC Links P through 12 participants. And each year we have about 7, I believe, ethnic designations. Hawaiian Pacific Islander, which is in light blue or teal. We have orange for American Indian, green for white, also Swana. Swana was a new definition that was introduced by SAPEP in 2015. So a lot of the data for that is a little bit complicated, because before that they were lumped into the same ethnic background. So unfortunately, we're not able to like sort of distinguish those two ethnic backgrounds from each other before 2015. And then yellow for Asian, red for African American, and blue for Latinx. And you can tell that overwhelmingly the biggest population that is served by UC Links is Latinx. Over 50% for all of its history. And the trends, as we'll look at once we start looking at the representation in undergraduates, they follow the same general trends for white and Asian. I'll go ahead and show that now. For graph C, we have the undergraduate participants, and as you can tell, the trends are a lot more pronounced now, as the kind of proportions are a little bit different. We can tell that White SWANA has decreased over time, similar to the P through 12 participants. Asian has stayed roughly the same, a little bit of, fluctuation here and there. And Latinx has increased from about 20% all the way up to 40% over a 20-year span. So we can tell that there's a growing trend of representation here. It's not necessarily equal to the P through 12 participants, as we expect, one of the goals of UC Links is to try and prepare students to go into undergraduate. We kind of expect, hopefully over time that the numbers will match undergraduates with P through 12 participants. And one thing to point out too, 2012 was also another changing definition in the SAPEP, a changing ethnic definition in SAPEP. So this year is sort of like an anomaly, since we have like 50% of more than one are unknown. They just weren't listed. And then finally, just for context comparison, this is the ethnic background of system-wide UC undergraduates that participate in all UCs. And we can tell the graph obviously is a little bit more cleaner. This is like the public data that we have. And you can tell how the trends follow about similar to UC Links. However, the actual raw numbers and the population is a little bit different. So Latinx has also increased over time from 13% up to 26%. The Asian population has stayed roughly the same, much like UC Links. And the white and SWANA population has decreased from 35% to about 20%. So these trends follow basically the same trends that we're seeing in P through 12 and undergraduate. However, there is a differing sort of, base number of people who are participating in UC Links, which brings us to the conclusions and further research. So as I mentioned earlier, there is a visible upward trend in Latinx representation between the P through 12 and undergraduate participants in UC Links. However, when compared to the UC undergraduates system-wide, it does seem that UC Links participants do have greater diversity when compared historically. So there is progress being made in UC Links specifically. And meanwhile, the Asian and white SWAN ethnic backgrounds match a lot more cleaner to what we see in UC Links and P through 12. And the year-over-year trends are also similar. So for future research, these are a couple of questions I posed, kind of using this data that we have compiled as a foundation. So firstly and foremost, why are Latinx undergraduates underrepresented system-wide and in UC Links programs compared to Asian and white SWANA? And what is it that accounts for the difference in representation between UC Links participants and the undergraduate system-wide? So why is UC Links participants represented a little bit more than the undergraduates are system-wide? So is it related to declared major, maybe area of interest or something else? Is sort of like a good area for research. And then do these aggregate findings hold true in individual UC Links program sites? The location might matter a lot into how this looks. And the story that we're telling with this data could be a lot different where we're looking at the specific sites that contribute to the UC Links programs overall. And then finally, what did the representation of, undergraduate ethnic backgrounds look like prior to 2004? Because we don't have that information for UC Links before 2004. And then also looking system-wide before the elimination of affirmative action in 1996. So that's it for the presentation. Thank you for listening.